topographic large-scale features can be found in all the three oceans. The geographic distribution of the relief features, however, distinguishes one ocean from the other. In the present chapter, the bottom reliefs, the Atlantic, Pacific and Indian Oceans has been discussed briefly. After the lesson, you will be able to understand the ocean relief features on three main prominent oceans of the world. Water covers 70% of the Earth's surface, in which only 3% are fresh water. Of this, 2% is in polar ice caps and only 1% is usable water. Oceans make up around 67% of the Earth's surface. The relief features of the oceans are quite different from the continental features because the oceanic crust is less than 60 to 70 million years old, whereas continental features are of Proterozoic age, which are over 1 billion years old. Shape and size. The Atlantic Ocean extends about 16.5% of the total area of the Earth. The percentage does not include that within its marginal seas. The area of this ocean is about 50% to the Pacific Ocean. The most striking feature about the bottom of the Atlantic is the presence of mid-Atlantic ridge that divides the ocean in half. The ridge extends 2.5 kilometers above the deep sea plains on either side. The submarine ridge slopes gently towards the deep sea plain on either side. It's a S-shaped following the general trend of the coastlines. On the eastern side towards the west, while the north coast of South America recedes into the Caribbean Sea. While the Cape Sao Rock projects eastwards the Gulf of Guinea and recedes in the same direction. From the nature of the shape of the respective coasts together with other geological and biological evidences, it becomes amply clear that in the remote past the continents on both the sides of the present ocean must have been part of a single landmass. The ocean basin becomes narrower towards the equator. The distance between the Liberian coast of Africa and Cape Sao Rock is only 2,560 kilometers. To the north of the equator, the North Atlantic Basin is 4,800 kilometers wide in latitude 40 degree north, while the South Atlantic Basin is 5,920 kilometers wide in the latitude of 35 degrees south. Whereas the South Atlantic opens broadly into the Southern Ocean, North Atlantic is rather enclosed by Greenland and Iceland. The continental shelf. Barring a few areas, the Atlantic Ocean is characterized by having a broad continental shelf all around. The continental shelves of the North Atlantic are almost broad and flat surfaced everywhere. As we know, the shelves along such coasts are backed by mountains or plateaus and are very narrow, while those on the coast flanked by the plains are quite broad and level. That is why the continental shelves adjoining the northeast coast of the United States of America and West European coastal plains are quite broad. On the contrary, the continental shelf is rather narrow from the Bay of Biscay to the Cape of Good Hope. The width of the shelf for the Labrador coast varies from 240 to 400 kilometers. But the shelf near the Brazilian coast is very narrow because of the presence of a plateau flanking the sea coast. Mid-oceanic ridges and rises. As stated earlier, the S-shaped mid-Atlantic ridge occupies the middle part of the ocean basin. This region extends from the Bear Islands in the north to the Bouvet Island in the south over a distance of about 15,000 kilometers. It may be stated that with the exception of Bermuda Islands, all the oceanic islands of this ocean belong to this ridge and other transverse ranges arising from it. The presence of the longitudinal ridge is the most characteristic feature of the bottom relief of this ocean. The average depth of the water above the ridge is about 1700 fathoms. The northern part of the ridge is known as the Dolphin Rise and the southern part as the Challenger Rise. In the North Atlantic, the mid-Atlantic ridge is relatively wider and forms broad telegraph plateau. The submarine plateau extends from Ireland to Labrador. To the east and west of the mid-Atlantic ridge, there are several transverse ridges in this ocean basin. The 𝗹 ridges extends from the neighborhood of Tristan da Cunha to the west coast of Africa. It runs in a northeasterly direction. Another ridge called the Rio Grande Ridge originates in the same area and runs to the South American coast. From the Telegraph Plateau, a broad ridge extends from North Scotland to the southeastern Greenland and is covered by 550 fathoms deep water. In fact, the Faroe and the Iceland are the higher parts of the ridge rising about the sea surface. The submarine ridge located between the northern Scotland and Iceland is called the Weil-Thomson Ridge. The basins. There are numerous basins surrounded by ridges and rises on the floor of the Atlantic Ocean. Few of them are Labrador Basin. It is situated between the continental shelf of Greenland in the north and Newfoundland Ridge in the south. It is a comparatively shallow basin of 4,000 meters in depth. Northeast Atlantic Basin. It's an elongated basin stretching from northeast to southwest direction. Along the Iberian Peninsula, it is known as the Iberian Basin. This basin is deeper in its southern portion where its depth exceeds 5,000 meters. Northwestern Atlantic Basin. It's perhaps the biggest basin in the North Atlantic. The depth of the whole of the basin is more than 5,000 meters with few deeps in the central part. Cape Verde Basin. Extending longitudinally, Cape Verde Basin is situated between Central Ridge and Africa. The basin is between 5,000 to 7,000 meters deep. Guinea Basin. Along the Guinea coast, Africa, stretching from northwest to southeast, the basin lies between Sierra Leone and Guinea Ridge. It is in the form of separated basins along the coast between 5,000 and 7,000 meters depth. Brazilian Basin. In the South Atlantic, the Brazilian Basin extends south of Paraíso. The depth here is more than 6,000 meters. Deeps of the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean floor is characterized by a general absence of linear deeps. This is due to the absence of rather recent fold lines along the Atlantic coast. However, there are a very few important deeps found on the ocean floor. These oceanic deeps are usually called deep sea trenches or troughs. Just to the north of Puerto Rico, there is a very deep trough called Puerto Rico Deep. It is the deepest of all the troughs or deeps found on the floor of the Atlantic Ocean. It is 4,812 fathoms deep. Shape and size. The Indian Ocean covers 20% of the total area of all the oceans of the world. It is a warm ocean blocked on three sides by the continents of Africa, Asia and Australia. Most of the coast is made up of hard block mountains of Gondwana remnants in Africa, Australia, Deccan Plateau of India and Western Australia. But folded ranges are also found along East Indies. The shape of the ocean is compact with bold and regular coastlines. In the south, it extends up to Antarctican continent where it merges into the Atlantic and the Pacific. The average depth of the ocean is 4,000 meters, which is less varying and comparatively lesser than that of other oceans. Out of the total area, the deep sea plain with the depth between 4,000 to 6,000 meters covers 58.8% of the area. Now the continental shelf of Indian Ocean. The continental shelf surrounding this ocean varies in its width. The continental shelf of this ocean is generally narrow with the average width of about 96 kilometers. However, in the Arabian Sea, the Bay of Bengal and the Andaman Sea, the width of the shelf varies from 192 kilometers to 208 kilometers. On the seaward margin of the shelf, the depth of the water lies between 50 and 200 meters. Between Australia and New Guinea island, the shelf is 960 kilometers wide. Due to intense glaciation, the structure of the shelf adjoining the Antarctica has become very complex. In such areas, the landward margins of the shelf are 150 to 200 meters deep, whereas the seaward margins register depth varying from 400 to 500 meters. In the tropical areas, different types of coral reefs such as fringing reef, barrier reef and atolls can be found on the shelf. The continental slopes On the outer margins of the shelf are marked by extreme steepness, angle of the slope varying from 10 degree to 30 degree. The continental shelves are characterized by many submarine valleys and canyons. The width of the shelf along the coast of Africa is just normal, but near Madagascar, the shelf is relatively broader than elsewhere. The continental shelves of Java and Sumatra Islands are about 160 kilometers wide. Ridges and basins of the Indian Ocean. The bottom relief of the Indian Ocean resembles that of an Atlantic Ocean. This ocean has a continuous central ridge called the Arabic Indian Ridge, together with its southern extension, the Kerguelen-Gasberg Ridge, which connects with the Antarctic continent. The central ridge separates the eastern basin from the western basin. Remember that all the oceanic islands in the ocean are situated on the central ridge and on its cross ridges. The Indian Ocean is characterized by having many broad submarine ridges separating several individual basins of the abyssal plain. One of the most distinguishing features is the presence of a series of curving ridges in the northwest segment of the ocean. The above mentioned ridges divide the Indian Ocean into three distinct parts: the African part, the Australian part, and the part adjoining the continent of Antarctica. Each one of these parts is further subdivided into several basins by ridges and the submarine mountain chains, namely Comoros and the North Australian Basin extending up to 320 kilometers, South Indian Basin and the Australian Antarctic Basin extending up to 9,000 kilometers. The Arabian Basin is surrounded by ridges. The East Indian Ridge, also called the 90 East Ridge, is 4,000 kilometers long and straight. The ridge joins the West Australian Ridge, the Broken Ridge, in the south. It is interesting to note that the central ridge that runs from near the Cape Comorin to Antarctica has been given different names in its different sections. In the south, the central ridge becomes wider, and there it is called the Amsterdam-St. Paul Plateau. A transverse branch goes towards the southeast from Cape Gardeful, the eastern horn of Africa, to join the main ridge and is named the Sokrota-Chagos Ridge. Another transverse ridge called the Seychelles Ridge runs parallel to the Sokrota-Madagascar and trends southwards. It's called the South Madagascar Ridge. Farther south, it becomes wider and is known as the Prince Edward Crozet Ridge. Thus, the submarine ridges rising from the coastal areas of peninsular India, Madagascar and the eastern coast of Africa extend southwards. In south, the extensive plateau of Kerguelen extends from northwest to southeast. There are numerous trenches beside the submarine ridges on the ocean floor, which among the East Indian, Chagos and Emerante trenches are very important. Oceanic deeps of the Indian Ocean. Out of the total area of the Indian Ocean, about 58.8% forms deep sea plains between the depth of 4,000 to 6,000 meters. Unlike the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans, the oceanic deeps with unfathomable depths are lacking. The Sunda Deep near Java is an exception. The depth of this oceanic deep is 7,450 meters. Islands relative to the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean, the number of islands in the Indian Ocean is far less. Some of the islands, however, are supposed to be parts of the mainland. Out of these islands, Madagascar and Sri Lanka are the most prominent. Some of the smaller islands, namely Sokrota, Zanzibar and Comoros, situated off the Cape Gardefui, fall into this category. The marginal seas. Since the coastal areas of Indian Ocean are generally plateaus, the number of marginal seas is far less. In fact, there are only two real marginal seas in this ocean, the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. The Red Sea occupies a rift valley between the continent of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. The Red Sea is separated from the Indian Ocean by a submerged silt across the Strait of Bab el Mandab. The depth of the water over this silt is only 200 fathoms. The Persian Gulf represents a shallow trough. It is practically enclosed and separated from the open ocean by the northward projecting Oman Peninsula. Due to this peninsula, the Strait of Hormuz has become very narrow, its width limited to only 80 kilometers. Shape and size. The Pacific Ocean, covering 1/3 of the area of the Earth, extends from the coast of Asia in the west to America in the east, which covers around 16,093 kilometers, and from Bering Strait in the north to the Cape Adare in Antarctican continent in the south, which covers around 14,966 kilometers. The average depth of the Pacific is about 5,000 meters. Only 3.9% of its area is less than 1,000 meters, whereas major portion of 30.9% lies below 5,000 meters, excluding adjacent seas. The descent from the coast to the seaplain is very much steeper. The oceanic surface in general is uniform with broad, gentle swells and depressions. Maximum area of 37.7% lies within 4,000 to 5,000 meters of depth. It is the most unique ocean in many respects. It has a broad triangular shape all along the coast for nearly 17,700 kilometers. The folded mountains are found parallel to it. In the north, it is completely blocked excepting a narrow Bering Sea passage into the Arctic Ocean. Now, the continental shelf of the Pacific Ocean. The continental shelf surrounding the margin of the Pacific Ocean is controlled by the shape and structure of its coastline. On the eastern margin of this ocean, the width of the shelf is rather narrow. Due to the presence of the Rockies and the Andes Mountains parallel to the west coasts of North and South Americas respectively, the continental shelves have become very narrow. The width is limited to only 80 kilometers. However, on the western margin of this ocean, due to the absence of mountain chains or plateaus, the continental shelf is broad. The continental shelves adjoining the coasts of Australia, East Indies and East Asia are relatively much broader. Along these coasts, the width of the shelves varies from 160 to 1600 kilometers, with their average depth hardly exceeding 1000 meters. On these shelves are situated most of the islands and the marginal seas. Now, the ridges of the Pacific Ocean. Pacific Ocean is different from the other oceans in respect that it has no central ridge. Only a few submarine ridges can be located here and there, mostly on the eastern margin of the ocean, and the submarine swells are found in the middle of the Pacific. One of the most important ridges, known as the East Pacific Ridge or the Albatross Plateau, which is 3,000 to 4,000 meters deep, is quite extensive. The northeast projection of the plateau is known as the Cocos Ridge and extends from the coast of Central America towards southwest. San Felix Juan Fernandez Ridge, less than 2,000 meters deep, and runs parallel to the Chilean coast. The western ridge moves to the south and forms a wide plateau between 20 degrees to 40 degrees south latitude, known as the Southeastern Pacific Plateau. The depth here is between 2,000 to 4,000 meters. Further south, the same plateau narrows down in the form of a curved Pacific Antarctic ridge, where the depth is about 3,500 meters. Now, the basins of the Pacific Ocean. Many depressions and basins separated by numerous swells are also found in the Pacific Ocean. Aleutian Basin, north of the Aleutian Island. This basin is 4,000 meters deep. Next, the Philippine Basin, situated east of the Philippine Islands. This basin extends up to 5 degrees north. Its depth varies between 5,000 to 6,000 meters. The western part of the basin is comparatively deeper than 6,000 meters. West Caroline Basin. It is 4,000 to 5,000 meters deep, circular basin east of the Philippine Basin. The East Caroline Basin, this basin is also 5,000 meters deep. Fiji Basin, south of the Fiji Island, Fiji Basin is more than 4,000 meters. East Australian Basin, a 4,000 meters deep basin, compact and circular in form, extends east of Australia with areas deeper than 5,000 meters found in the north. South Australian or Jeffreys Basin, It is a 5,000-meter longitudinal basin extending south of Australia. Southwestern Pacific Basin. It's a wide 6,000-meter deep basin. Southeastern Pacific Basin. This 5,000 meters deep and broad basin extends west of Peru and Chile with Barrier Deep of 5,266 meters depth. The Pacific Antarctic Basin. It extends southwest of Chile. Now the deeps of the Pacific Ocean. Total 32 deeps are recorded in the Pacific, out of which most of them are in the trenches, longitudinal deep areas parallel to the island arc or the mountain chains. These deeps are located mostly in the western part of the ocean. The following are some of the most important deeps and trenches. The Aleutian Trench. It is an arc-like depression bordering the Aleutian Islands. The average depth is about 6,000 meters and the maximum recorded depth is 7,679 meters. Kuril Trench and the Japan Trench, which lie parallel to the Japanese islands. The 8,000 meters deep trench extends for 2,700 kilometers and seldom more than 160 kilometers away from the land. In it are situated 𝗧𝗧 Deep and Ramapo Deep. The Philippine Trench, extending 64 kilometers along the eastern coast of Philippine Islands. The trench records the greatest depth of 10,497 meters off the island of Mindanao, known as the Cape Johnson Deep. Mariana Trench. The Challenger Deep in the South Pacific's Marianas Trench is the deepest known part of the ocean. Its bottom lies 10,900 meters below the sea level. Tonga-Kermadec Trench. It is trough-like depression extending from northeast to southwest along the Tonga and Kermadec Islands. They are measured to be 8,000 meters deep with 9,428 meters Aldrich deep. Peruchelli Trench. It is situated along the Andean coast in the form of broken trenches. Bartholomew Deep, which is 7,970 meters long, located near the Antofagasta city. The oceanic relief features are in the form of mountains, basins, plateaus, ridges, canyons and trenches beneath the ocean water. These forms are called submarine relief. The ocean relief can be divided into various parts such as continental shelf, continental slope, continental rise or foot, deep ocean basins, abyssal plains, abyssal hills, oceanic trenches, seamounts and guyots. Here in today's lesson, we have understood the features of three main prominent oceans of the world, namely Atlantic, Pacific and the Indian Oceans.